Carrie Snyder is the award-winning author of 4 books of fiction, including Girl Runner, which was translated into a dozen languages and was a finalist for the Rogers Trust Prize, and the Juliet Stories, which was a finalist for the Governor General's Award. Her new novel, Francie's Got a Gun, was published by Knopf Canada in summer 2022 and was named to the Globe and Mail's Best 100 book list for 2022. She's a consulting editor for the New Quarterly magazine, and she teaches creative writing at the University of Waterloo. In 2019, Carrie co-founded a collaborative community-based storytelling workshop for refugee and immigrant women in Waterloo region, which is now running in its 5th season. Carrie also writes an award-winning literary blog at carriesnyder.com, which you can follow. And she also works as a secretary and library clerk for the public school board and lives in Waterloo with 4 kids, sundry guests, dogs, in Waterloo, Ontario. So given all this activity, how, you might ask, does Carrie find the time to do her own writing? So here I'm happy to share an anecdote I heard at lunch. So Carrie once wrote a draft of a novel, an entire novel, in just 10 days by writing 15,000 words. So for those of us who do the writing, 15,000 words a day is remarkable. Also explains Carrie's commitment to yoga, because you need a break from all that. After Carrie's reading, she'll be able to take a few questions from the audience. Now, please join me in welcoming Carrie to the stage.
Good afternoon, Western community. I don't recommend that as a way to get to a draft. Don't do that. I don't think it's healthy. I'm going to start this afternoon with a reading from my new novel, Francie's Got a Gun, which was published last summer. And I'm just so appreciative of all of you taking this time out of your day, your afternoon, to come together, to sit quietly and listen to words being lifted off the page by my voice. Your attention is a gift. In a profound sense, I believe it is a radical act in our distracted world, our culture of busyness or perpetual motion, of valuing work and looking askance at ease. So I invite you to rest for this while. Nothing is expected of you. Take a deep breath in and a long breath out. Again, breathing in, feeling your body lift slightly. Breathing out, feeling your body relax more deeply into your chair. You do not need to change anything. Notice what your hands are doing. Can you feel them resting in your lap? Notice where your feet are placed. Are they planted on the ground? Or maybe one is swinging in the air. Feel free to close your eyes as I'm speaking if that allows you to relax more deeply. I will be reading from the opening chapter of Francie's Got a Gun. And all you need to know is that Francie is a child, 10 years old, and that what is happening to her is something that even an adult would find difficult to process and understand. She is trying to solve a problem that's beyond her capacity to fix. Chapter 1. Gun Run. A lot of things were going wrong all at once. Francie couldn't feel her hands or lips or feet. She knew that the air was warm, thick, almost wet, and she knew that her jeans were sticking to her legs, like she was swimming, not running. Her arm hanging from her shoulder was so heavy. She knew that was the gun, but she couldn't feel it in her hand. It was as if, in one sudden move, lurching forward, wrenching away, Francie had become someone else, another girl entirely, maybe not even a child, a stranger. Was it possible to split in two, to float above herself like watching another person? Floating and watching, floating and watching. She had no pity, only curiosity for this other girl, running, running, running. The girl, the other Francie, was a pretty good runner, but her feet were tangled in sagging cuffs, flapping sneakers, and she couldn't see so well. Overgrown bangs, hair in her eyes. Her heart was going to hammer through her throat. The floating Francie could watch and wonder without having to feel the crackle of fear, its electrical snap. The terrible thing that it seemed they had all been waiting for, silently, numbly, almost expecting, had happened, suddenly and all at once. Now she had to run. There was no other choice but to hide and to run and to hide. It was like playing a game, but the game had no rules. It's okay, she told herself, watching from above. It's okay because you've got the gun now. You've got the gun, not him. But she didn't want the gun. A lot of things were going wrong. The hot June afternoon, the tangling jeans, the neighborhood behind the school that she didn't know at all, with streets all hushed and grand and empty, smooth paved blackness turning round and round as if to confuse her. She ran like a rat dropped into a maze. The gun. She forced herself to feel it in her hand, to wrap her buzzing fingers around it, tightly enough not to drop it by accident. It looked small, but it was heavy, blunt-nosed, a snout like an angry little animal, one you could not make friends with or adopt or bring home, no matter how you tried. But Francie wasn't running home. She wasn't running anywhere, just away. The thought was almost enough to break her apart entirely. The floating Francie imagined what it would look like if the Francie who was running, hot and red and lost down the middle of a silent street, was to shatter, break into all her parts, an arm, a leg, and then a kneecap, a toe, and into smaller and smaller bits until she was nothing at all, invisible, scattered like dust. But that Francie did not shatter, did not stop, not quit. She heard the sound of a car or a truck turning into the street behind her, but she didn't look back, not even a glance. To look back would be the end. And this was not the end of Francie. The floating Francie suddenly saw through the other Francie's eyes, and it was like being pulled inside a tunnel, a quick tightening of vision, sharpened onto a still point of light ahead, everything else fading into a blur. She could hear her breath, harsh, wheezing, like a car with a bad muffler. Or was that the truck? The red pickup truck with the broken window behind her. Like in a dream she would dream over and over, Francie saw herself veering onto perfect, soft grass. Green grass, soft with the click of soaking sprinklers. She was at the top of a steep hill. She was plunging down. Inside her head, a small whine was sounding like an alarm. It seemed to grow stronger, louder. It wanted to break through. It wanted her to let it loose, to scream. But she couldn't let it loose. She had to be silent, silently screaming through a mist of cool water that rose as if by magic from beneath dark green grass beside a house of steel and glass, an enormous house, as big as the houses Dad used to build, bigger even. Down, 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 through wood chips and fresh plantings of tiny bushes and crawling vines, terraces held by huge, smooth rocks. Francie skidded and jumped, trying to stop the hand with the gun from catching her as she stumbled close to the house, glimpsing decks that jutted like shelves overlooking a seemingly endless lawn, wide and rolling. Open space. The tunnel burst wide. Not safe, exposed. She'd slipped to her knees, fallen onto patio stone. Her elbow ached, the elbow attached to the hand with the gun raised. Anyone could see it. One breath, two, shallow, raw. Lifting her to her feet, tipping her forward as she sensed rather than saw a woman wearing headphones and pushing a vacuum across an interior floor. Sensed, dreamlike, the woman pause, notice her, step to the shining wall of windows, and in that single flashing frame become a shadow from which Francie was fleeing, away into the open, across this wide, smooth-shorn green field. A golf course. A cart rolling to the top of a hill and stopping, the men like tiny action figures climbing out, moving around. The gun hung from the hand that did not feel like Francie's hand. She saw herself lift it and slide it under her t-shirt to hide it against her stomach. Now it was harder to run, awkward, and she had the sensation again of swimming rather than running, swimming, something she wasn't any good at, flailing and sinking under the surface. The gun felt cold against her stomach. Her stomach felt empty, even though she remembered sitting at her desk at first nutrition break and chewing on the butter and jam sandwich Grandma Irene had made this morning. Her backpack felt empty too, bouncing on her shoulders, even though she remembered zipping the lunchbox into it before walking down the hall, obeying the secretary's too familiar call over the loudspeakers. "Will Francie Foltz please come to the office? Francie Foltz to the office." Mrs. G in front of the whole choir, flinging her baton on the gymnasium floor, waving her arms. "Francie, this is impossible. You can't leave now. The concert is tonight, and this is our only dress rehearsal. What could be more important?" "Well, this, Mrs. G." Francie was wearing her favorite t-shirt, black with a sparkly cat formed of glued-on jewels, not real, and below the cat the word love, spelled out in jewels too, also not real, except in an imaginary world. The shirt could be turned inside out for the concert, which Mrs. G said they could do if they were desperate. The choir should all look the same, dressed head to toe in black, like professionals, Mrs. G said. When Francie drew the cat shirt over her head this morning, so stretchy and soft, so shiny with jewels, she heard Mrs. G's voice saying, "If you're desperate." And she didn't think Mrs. G knew what that word meant, desperate. Francie scrambled through a wide, sandy pit in the grass. She was too much inside herself suddenly. She wasn't floating anymore. Her sneakers were full of sand. A hole opened up behind Francie's eyes. She could see Dad slouched in the torn-up dirt, bleeding, like he was going to kill someone, like he already had. But that wasn't over. That was now. That just happened, was still happening. She could see his face red and wet, his eyes leaking, but not real tears. "Here, take it," Dad said. "Now get the hell out of here." A lot of things were going wrong. Her eye was full of sand where her hand wiped it by accident, not the hand with the gun. 4! Pastel shirts, pink faces under white ball caps, heads bobbing as the golf cart zoomed down the hill. The action figures were becoming real. Francie ran toward a wall of bushes. The bushes were thick. Wriggling on her belly, she crawled in deep. It wasn't just Dad she kept seeing, slouched in the torn-up dirt. It was Mikey, him too, seeping, slumped, fallen into the gravel and dirt, lying there. He looked at her with his sad brown eyes as she took the gun and ran right by him. Dad had said he wasn't going to see Mikey ever again. Dad said it was over. They'd never work together again. He was giving up on Mikey. But that was a different day, a different construction site out in the country. That was May. That was the day Mrs. G had passed around the sign-up sheet where you could write your name if you wanted to sing a solo. Francie's hands shook so hard that she had to dig the pencil's tip into the paper to write the letters of her own name so that Mrs. G could read them later. Alice was watching. She whispered, "You'll get a solo for sure." Francie passed her the piece of paper and the pencil, and Alice hesitated, but didn't write down her name. Francie knew she should have whispered encouragement to Alice too, but something ugly and small and argumentative inside herself held back the words. Alice passed the paper and pencil to the next person in the row, and too late, Francie whispered, "Maybe we could get a duet?" But maybe Alice didn't hear. The loudspeaker was crackling. Will Francie Foltz please come to the office? Francie Foltz to the office. Not again. Mrs. G had lowered her baton, and Francie looked at the floor. Where do you think you're going now? But how could Francie know? Dad was there to surprise her, like he liked to do. He was waiting for her in the office, leaning his elbows on the counter while the school secretary turned pink with laughter. As they walked to his car, Dad winked at Francie just like he'd winked at the secretary. He said, "You have a very important meeting with your very important dad." "But I was in choir practice," said Francie. "What? You want to go back? I can take you back." Francie shook her head no. "I might get a solo," she said, mostly to herself. As they drove out of town onto a familiar country road, Dad switched on the radio. He smiled at her. "Wait till you see this place, kiddo. It's going to be a palace." Then she knew they weren't going to Grandma's house. They were going to see a building or part of a building under construction. She rested her forehead on the window and watched for horses in the fields, maybe even a wild Mustang, galloping and bucking. The fields were light green and the ditches were soft with dandelions and other flowering weeds. At the construction site, Dad parked in the gravel beside the road and climbed out, walked around the hood of his caddy, rapping the shiny gold with his knuckles. "Wait till you see the dimensions on this place." Through the window, Francie saw a horse running smoothly along the fence line, hooves strumming the ground, tail sailing, away from them. Dad opened Francie's door and cool, fresh air blew in. Francie looked down at her sneakers. The grass in the ditch was wet. Dad was wearing a blue jacket, unzipped over a white t-shirt, bare hands stuffed into pockets. The lane was long, sharp with newly poured gravel. "Imagine what this is going to be," said Dad. The construction site didn't look like anything yet, but that's how everything started, Dad said. You start with nothing but a good imagination and watch out. You'll make big things happen. The running horse was a speck against a far stand of trees. Francie imagined being the horse, galloping, kicking, its tail streaming out behind its heels like a wild Mustang. Dad was coming along slowly, his right foot dragging behind him through the stones. His boots were dark leather. Francie had watched him rub them clean with a rag and wax them with polish, sitting in the front hall on the bench where Mom piled cloth shopping bags and whatever wasn't junk that came in the mail. Dad was as tall as a giant. His bad leg swung from his hip. It didn't bend at the knee or ankle. He didn't always have a bad leg. It got hurt last summer, and Mom didn't need to tell Francie not to talk about it. No one did. Francie hummed the song they'd been singing in Mrs. G's music portable, a struggle song, Mrs. G called it. They were coming to the end of the lane, a sea of churned-up mud. Dad pressed down on Francie's shoulder, squeezed, and pushed off, moving toward a big machine that was chewing up dirt, dropping it by the bucket load into the back of a waiting dump truck. Another truck idled behind that one. "Now this is a big operation. This is the big time, kiddo," said Dad. A man hopped down from the cab of the second truck. He was holding a brown paper coffee cup in one hand, and he shouted over the rumble of the engine, "Hey, it's Lucky!" Dad was looking around for her. "This is my girl, Francie." But the man didn't like that. "Hombre," he said, "this is no place for kids." "Francie's a pro. Great kid," said Dad, setting his hand on top of her head. Francie didn't take her eyes off the stranger. He was looking at her, too, examining her unhappily. He lifted the cup to his lips, took a swig, and spat it on the ground. "Cold," he said. He came up close to Dad and tapped him on the shoulder, leaned in. "Are you sure you should be here?" "What's that supposed to mean?" "I heard Mikey's on to you. I heard he knows what you're selling." "Mikey who? Mikey, my buddy, my partner, my brother? Don't you worry about Mikey." The man dumped out his coffee into the dirt. "Surprised you'd come around, that's all," he said. He tossed the cup, and it caught in the breeze and rolled away. Uh-oh. Dad said, "You think you know Mikey so well? Mikey sells a clean site, and when we say clean, we mean fucking pristine." Dad put his hand on the man's chest, and the man took a big step backward. A smile played on the man's lips, like he didn't know much. He didn't know what her dad could do, Francie thought, already running to pick up the cup. The cup lifted and danced, but Francie leapt and caught it. The jaws of the big digger swung over her head, and she heard the man shouting, but not Dad. Little stones rushed down into the freshly dug hole, but she wasn't going to slip in. She wasn't going to fall. Dad was calling her, calm and slow. "Come on back now, Francie. There's a girl." She scrambled to her feet and ran back to them, the big machine gone quiet overhead. Dad's eyes were watering. "Dios mío, that was too fucking close," the man was yelling. "Watch your language." Dad wasn't yelling. "What's your name again, kid?" The man's voice was high, shaky. Francie looked at Dad, and he nodded, so she said loud and clear, "Francie." "How old are you, Francie?" 10, she said. 10, yeah, I got a 10-year-old at home. Grade 4, grade 5? Grade 4, said Dad. But Francie shook her head, dropped her voice to a whisper. Grade 5, she said, just to put it on the record. She was looking at the field where the horse was running up near the road again, and a truck was turning into the lane, a red pickup truck, moving slow. Dad was patting around his jacket pocket. "Well, I'm here. Anything I can do for you today?" "I told you, watch your back," the man hissed. "If you don't want anything, just say so." "I don't want anything." The man put his hand up over his mouth like he was covering a cough. "Mikey's here." "Mikey's here? I didn't see his truck." "Turn around." Dad glanced over his shoulder. "Well, speak of the devil." Francie saw the horse jogging along the fence at the same pace as the pickup truck. Sure enough, it was Mikey. She remembered last summer when he'd come over to the backyard with hot dogs and buns. And Mom kept saying Dad's accident wasn't Mikey's fault. Nobody was blaming him. Mikey almost broke the picnic table. The whole bench swooped low under his weight. And Francie remembered he'd wiped his face with the paper napkin till it was crumpled and sopping, and Mom gave him the whole pile. "Come back any time," Mom had told him when he left, and Dad said, "Check with him next time before passing out invitations." And why'd she say that anyway? "Because he's our friend." "He owes me," said Dad. You couldn't see anything wrong with Dad's leg when he was sitting down, just when he tried to stand up. "Okay," Mom had said, "if you say so." "Francie," Dad said now, his eyes watering, "I need you to do something for me." He took her hand and opened it. "Run to the tree line and throw this away. I'll time you." She looked to see what it was, a plastic sandwich bag with foil packets inside. But Mikey keeps a clean sight, she thought. On your mark, get set, go. The field looked grassy and smooth, but it wasn't. When her foot stepped in a hole, Francie crashed sideways, and she hoped Dad wasn't watching. She popped back up and kept running, arms pumping. She felt the wind lift her hair like she was the horse, galloping. At the trees, she stopped at the wire fence, orange with rust that flaked off on her fingers. She stuffed the bag into the paper cup, crumpled it up, and threw everything over the fence. When she turned around, Mikey's red truck was parked across the porta-potty, looking across the field toward her. Dad and the men looked like dollhouse people, like she could pick them up and move them around with her fingers. But where would she put them? She was real. Everyone else was pretend. Dad and the men made a small circle that broke apart. Their shouts were faint and traveled out of sync with their movements. Francie didn't want to go back. She kicked through the yellow-headed weeds that grew beside the rusty fence, walking toward the field where she'd seen the horse. And there it was, moving toward her too. A good shiver rippled up Francie's neck. Moving as quietly as possible, she ripped up a handful of grass and slid it through the fence. The horse's lips brushed her open palm, and Francie felt a million feelings she wanted to feel rushing through her body, and none she didn't want to feel. Like a million colors, a million soft threads rushing under her skin, binding her up with bravery, keeping her safe. She stepped softly beside the fence, and the horse came along with her, watchful too, moving like they were attached by an invisible cord, till Francie came closer and closer to the bare dirt of the construction site. "Hey, Francie, honey, you okay? Everything okay?" Mikey was calling to her. The horse stopped, alert. Mikey began walking toward them, and Francie could see his shoulders lifting and falling as he breathed in and out heavily. She knew whose side she was on. She didn't have to tell Mikey anything. The horse trotted in a tight circle, slashing its tail, and Francie ran then up the gravel laneway. She was too fast for Mikey to catch her. Dad was ahead of them, already getting into the car. Francie climbed in and slammed the door, yanking hard on the handle to manage it. "Where'd you put that stuff I gave you?" "The cup? And the other stuff in the little bag. I threw it away, like you said." "Ah." His bad leg was trembling. The glove compartment hung open, and Francie shut it. Dad turned the key, and the engine roared. "What's the difference between an enemy and a friend?" Dad said. She had to be careful with him. He said, "When a friend stabs you in the back, it hurts more." She could see Mikey walking back toward his red truck, parked on the dirt beside the field. "We won't be coming back here again, promise you that." Dad cracked the window and moved the gear shift down to drive. Francie knew, because once he'd let her sit on his lap and move the gear shift and steer, but only once, when she was little, before his leg got hurt, before. Francie knew if she looked, that horse would be gone. So she didn't look. If she didn't look, the horse would be there forever. I'll stop there. Thank you for listening. I wanted to be a writer from the time I was a child. I learned to read before I started school, and my mom claims that I taught myself how to read. And maybe that's true. Certainly the connection I had with words, story, characters, and language came early. Reading felt as natural as breathing. At times, it seemed almost as necessary and life-giving. My parents had to make a rule: no reading at the dinner table. I read through all the children's books at the library. I read whatever I could get my hands on. I read books that I didn't fully understand, but it never bothered me not fully to understand. I was content with the presence of mystery, even then. Around the age of 7, it dawned on me that writing books was something that people did, that a person could do herself. I scarcely wavered from that point onward. I would be a writer. The path from reader to writer was fluid. I was immersed in a river of language, story. I was fascinated by how these marks on the page, these sounds and rhythms could be formed into words, phrases. I was amazed at how many meanings and implications and nuances a single word could carry. How a word could carry memory, too, or be associated with sensory experiences. I remain amazed, fascinated, in love with language and its possibilities. I'm not afraid that ChatGPT or its descendants will replace me or duplicate the delight of the human imagination. What makes a writer unique is their sensory life, their voice in the world, their embodiedness, which allows for experiences to shift and change how they see the world and themselves and their relationships. The imagination of the human being is a source of astonishing invention. Even the most sophisticated machine is operating on the basis of prediction. We humans, we have the capacity to be unpredictable, inconsistent, to say one thing and do another, to hurt and to heal. Even our physical capacity to age, to suffer the indignities of change, experienced collectively and yet wholly alone, is a source of our creative power. I believe that writing is a physical act. Just as language is formed in the body, the tongue changing shape, pushing against the teeth, the breath rising to support the vocalization, the lips closing and opening, the page turning and turning, the cheek muscles tensing and relaxing, the mouth and nose forming a resonant box, a musical instrument in a sense, and the heartbeat, providing an interior rhythm that helps us understand intuitively dissonance and harmony. So writing extends and deepens our understanding of language, precisely because it too is a physical act. An idea or concept or image that remains in the mind is not fully realized or understood. It is only through engagement that an idea, concept, image begins to take a form that can be offered to someone else. Engagement means there will be opportunities for change, for movement. The idea or concept or image expressed becomes a living entity that no longer belongs to the person who gave it form. That's what I mean by engagement. Engagement invites movement, interaction, change. And for writers, engagement starts on the page. As soon as you begin to explore your idea in any physical, embodied way, you will change it, and it will change you. Something that's kind of bothered me over the years is the degree to which aspiring writers tend to focus on getting published. It is far and away the question I've been asked most often. How did you do it? How did you get published? How can I get published? Why not, I've thought, ask me how to structure a story, how transitions work, or how to develop a character. But I'm beginning to see this question differently. Not so much as a desire to skip the hard parts, but as an expression of the very human longings that inspire a person to want to write in the first place, to find connection, to be seen or heard, and maybe understood, to find validation and engagement. To my mind, publishing is only one version of engagement. It's maybe the most obvious version of engagement to those less familiar with the range of possibilities within a writing life. A range that I've really only discovered and explored through a long and challenging career as a writer. And publishing, that particular version of engagement, is freighted with expectation. Think of expectation as a hoped-for future haunting the present, maybe even taunting the present, belittling the present, the thing that will never be, preventing the thing that could be from becoming. And in my experience, expectation is antithetical to the creative mindset. Creative flow exists entirely apart from expectation. They do not know each other. They are not acquainted. The mind that is creating is immersed in play. Think of children at play. My youngest, who's 14, and his sprawling group of neighborhood friends have recently been playing a lot of manhunt in the evenings after dark, with our house as the central landing spot. And to any outsider, their movements look inscrutable as they hurtle over our back fence, sprint up sidewalks, shout to each other, returning with soaked socks to boil up a pot of Kraft dinner at midnight in our kitchen. When I've asked my son for more details, what are they doing exactly? What's going on? He can't tell me. I remember playing similar games as a child, and I couldn't have told anyone either how even when I didn't fully understand the rules, I was fully engaged in running, shouting, looking, hiding, imagining, finding allies. The meaning that is created in these games through play is of the moment. there can be no expectations. Play is a state of being, of concentrated presence. It's generative, and it's utterly disinterested in what might come of what's being made. It loves what's being made because it loves making it. Francie is my 4th published book of literary fiction. I've also published 2 picture books for children, countless stories and poems in literary magazines, and creative nonfiction in anthologies. If I've learned anything from these varied experiences over nearly 2 decades, it's that publishing alone will not sustain a writing life. Publishing is the least of it, but it's not unimportant. And no one is wrong for wishing for it. It's just that there are so many other meaningful ways to find engagement, discovery, connection with others through writing. That's where I'm floating at this point in my life and my career as a writer. To be here at Western, a distinguished speaker, is to be experiencing the culmination of a long-held dream, held since childhood. To be recognized as a writer, a real writer. And yet, I can see that a childhood dream isn't fully formed. How could it be? My child and teenage self imagined a writer living in a little cottage in the woods, maybe even a little tree house, her head dancing with stories that pour forth, or maybe traipsing off to New York City was somehow mixed in there too, bright lights and snowy hair and a velvet couch and an opera cloak, whatever the heck that is. I suspect Madeleine L'Engle influenced my concept of the writing life. The self I am now can see that a writing life, a long and sustainable writing life, unfolds so very differently than imagined. My writing life is woven with all the other parts of my life, tethered to the reality of being a daughter, sister, mother, lover, friend, caregiver, teacher, employee, leader and follower, a human being full of needs and feelings, struggling to lessen the gap between who I am on the inside and who I appear to be on the outside. We exist as human beings in relationship to others. We exist in relationship. That is the biggest secret to writing characters, character development, as it's called. But it's also the most important thing that I've learned by being a writer, character development of a more painful, loving, meaningful, and profoundly life-altering sort. How do you write about what matters to you? You write. You get it out of your head and onto the page. By writing about an idea, especially through fiction or poetry, you discover your emotional and imaginative life through language. And by doing so, you give your idea coherence, shape, and form, so that what you see, feel, love, care about can be transferred to fellow human beings. They may even see, feel, love, care about your idea too. Isn't that astonishing? Isn't it miraculous? I don't even think we need a lot of tools in order to be able to do this. Yes, to craft a whole novel will take a diligence and discipline that not everyone will be interested in suffering through. But to follow an idea into being, that's open to all. Writing, shaping language on the page, is my primary creative medium. But of course, creative expression isn't limited to the written word. It belongs to all embodied practices. Creative expression is always available through sensory experiences. In my own creative practices and projects, I also use music, drawing, visual art, physical movement, dramatic movement, performance and vocalization to express and share ideas, to coach, to teach, and to participate in the ordinary activities of my mostly very ordinary days. What matters to you? What matters to me, and what I was writing about when writing Francie, is dignity. Dignity for children. honoring their experiences, paying attention to their needs, giving them space and freedom to play and explore without layering on adult expectations. Dignity for teens who are exploring their sexuality, their capacity for empathy, their relationships with peers. Dignity for adults, too. All of us gathered here today. We are all of us unfinished, still learning. We still have the capacity for play. That matters to me in how I enter into the world and how I explored the characters in Francie's world. Never assume anything about anybody else. Inquire, ask, listen. I have this theory that I can understand a character better than I can know myself, let alone anyone else. And maybe it's one of the reasons I write, one of the compulsions I'm responding to imagine that any of us could be known, truly, is to imagine a world of pure love. No judgment. In Francie, it mattered to me that each character was on a spiritual path, whether or not they were aware of it. I visualized the book's structure as a labyrinth, the circular kind you may have seen mapped out in meditative spaces, a church garden, or even a hospital floor. This kind of labyrinth is not a maze. You can't get lost in it. You simply put one foot in front of the other and follow the path till you arrive at the center. There you pause. In some spiritual practices, you're invited to set something down or bring a physical object to set down to symbolically let something go. And then you turn around and walk back out again, following the same path, but in the other direction. I wanted my characters each to follow this path, their own path, which has a lovely novelistic shape of 3, the path in, the pause for revelation, even on a small scale, the path out. Having walked a number of labyrinths myself, I've experienced a strange phenomenon over and over, which is then when you're walking in toward the center, it seems to take much longer than when you're walking back out again. That too fits well with the narrative arc, rising more slowly to a peak, then tapering down rather more expeditiously at the end. But really with this structure, what I wanted was to acknowledge the dignity in each of my characters, to recognize that each of them, no matter their flaws and limitations, had an inkling that they were a spiritual being occupying a physical body, that what their body experienced could be understood and healed in invisible ways by their spiritual self. That's why I write. That's what I seek to share when I invite others to write along with me. So to end this part of the presentation, I'm going to read the prologue to Francie, in which many of these ideas are crystallized, expressed through fiction, which is, after all, my favorite medium. The voice who speaks here is Francie herself, grown to adulthood, and somewhere along her path through the labyrinth. She's speaking to herself. We're just getting to listen in. Begin. Do fragments make a whole? You wake in the early hours before your alarm sounds, and you wish you had someone to tell about this feeling washing your body, of terror, nameless and blind and hauling you back through time. What was it like to be you when you were unformed and whole, innocent and brave, when everyone watched and nobody saw? Breathe, 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 you remind yourself. Breathe in, but also breathe out. You are curled tight on a futon on the floor, dim dawn light filtering through the high, uncovered window. You can hear the birds. You remind yourself who you are, a strong woman, tough, ambitious. You've left behind childhood. You've earned the degree you could afford and a job, and you talk to your mom and your brother or text with them regularly. And you've been training your body since you were a kid. And this summer on the weekends, you're back to competing in road races, a half marathon, a triathlon. whatever you can sign up for and afford to get yourself to. You're never going to win, never going to be the best, but that's not why you do it. Why do you do it? You set one hand on your stomach and one hand on your heart. You stretch out flat on your back. You could say that your body has a spirit or a soul, but when you search for it, try to see it, it cuts out like a firefly flickering on and off and gone in the night. You're not old. You've barely begun. Your capacity for growth feels infinite, but limited to your body. Maybe you're okay with that. Maybe you're not. Maybe you're torn like your muscles, day in and day out, seeking endurance through suffering. But what if you don't want to suffer? What if you're done with all that? What if you want to rest, to relax, to forgive, to turn toward everything and everyone with hope and open arms? What then? What now? If you keep running through the same story, can you come around to a different end? That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much for reading for us from your novel and for sharing your thoughts on both writing and the writing life. And now we're going to grill you. So I'm going to ask two things. Do we have questions from the internet? We do. Okay, we may get to some of those. So we'll take some questions from the audience. I would ask you, just put your hand up and I will wander over with this microphone because this is the only way that people on the internet can actually hear you. So, questions? You do.
Hi there. So having written the first draft of a novel and having gotten some feedback on it and being encouraged, how do you psych yourself up to actually sit down and do the rest of the work? That's what I want to know.
Are you asking for yourself?
Yes.
Well, there's always that kind of moment of pause after you've written a draft. And I advise taking a little time and just waiting for a little bit. And you don't want to push yourself to do it necessarily. You want to feel like you're ready to do it.
It's been decades.
Okay, that might be a while. It's been decades, so yep. I think you should start from scratch. Honestly, just start from scratch and see what comes up. And maybe it'll be characters from that novel. Maybe there'll be some little core or image that has remained with you. But it will probably be all brand new because you're different than you were decades ago. So you need to write something new.
I agree.
Okay. Well, that was easy.
I'm good.
Great. Excuse me. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you. I enjoyed that, both the reading and the talk. That was great. You started out your talk by talking about your life as a reader, and that was very much about your childhood. And then I wonder about your life as a reader now, and how you what are you reading, and how does that integrate with what you're writing?
Oh, that's a good question. I, like everybody else, am very distracted now. So I don't read quite as much as I used to. But I do still read, and every time I read, I'm just so amazed by how wonderful it is. But it almost feels like you need to have a weekend or something, you know? I used to try and read before bed, and then I would just fall asleep, and I would lose my place, and I couldn't keep it going. So now I try to read on, say, a Saturday afternoon, where I can really sink in. I read Barbara Kingsolver's most recent book recently, Demon Copperfield, I think it's called, Demon Copperhead. I'm reading something called The Trees right now by Percival Everett, which is very entertaining, a bit dark. I read a lot of contemporary fiction, whatever's coming out now. I find a curious thing is that I used to reread a lot, like up until I would say maybe when I had kids. So probably my reading life changed a little bit then too. I've read thousands of children's books to children. But I used to reread just for pleasure. Like I would feel like I was in a mood for, Pride and Prejudice mood. I gotta have the romance. And I don't do that anymore. And the few times that I have reread recently, I didn't enjoy the experience. I felt like the book had changed for me somehow, and I didn't feel the same way about it, and I'd somehow ruined it by trying to read it again. So I've been mainly just reading new fiction. Some Canadian, some world. Yeah. The Children's Bible. A Children's Bible, that's a really good one. Lydia Millett. Highly recommend it. Writers and Lovers, I think. Lily King. It's another I like entertaining books. I mean, they're literary, but I love a book that's entertaining too. Yeah.
Yep. All right, I'm going to get my exercise here. Oh.
So we have some questions online. So you spoke about how your life informs your writing, and I'd love to know if your fictional worlds ever inform your life. Like with your son playing in the magical worlds, does your writing ever cause you to play within the magic?
Oh gosh, I wish the person was here so I could get them to talk a bit more about that. I mean, I think I'm kind of a playful person. And so I have not given up playing. So play is very much a part of my life. I wouldn't try and enter into my son's play, but I'm not quite entirely sure what the question is about. How does my fictional world, could you read a little bit again? Sorry to make you go back to the mic.
I'd love to know if your fictional worlds ever inform your life. Okay. And then the follow-up to that was, like with your sons playing in the magical worlds, does your writing ever cause you to play within the magic?
Well, here's the thing, is that, I do like to play in my imagination, but I feel that maybe once we leave childhood, we do lose some access to that real play. So maybe I'm only half pretending to play. But by getting to write fiction, that's play. That's play. Absolutely. I get to imagine worlds and play in them. So, yes. And does my fiction inform my real life? I don't even know how to separate them out, I'll be honest. I think they inform each other. Yeah.
And back to the live audience. Sorry.
You talked about a number of different sort of artistic pursuits that I think you do. Dance and visual art and so on and so forth. And I was wondering, and it seems as though you're also involved. I think I looked at your blog, and you're involved in mindfulness practices and so on. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about those various other kind of disciplines and the way in which they have changed or affected your work over time?
Yeah. Well, I think in terms of play, so you can't write all the time, or I can't write all the time. At least I can't write fiction all the time. I can't be working on a major project all the time. But I still want to be feeling like I'm creative and playing. So a few years ago, I started drawing cartoons. I would say I couldn't draw. I couldn't draw is what I would have said, but I did learn how to draw much better just by doing it. And it was fun because I wasn't doing it for any reason except to try it out and challenge myself. And the same with music. I play the piano. There's some mornings when I don't feel like writing, but I feel like doing something, and I'll just sit down and play the piano. By ear, I can play classical music, but it's not so great anymore, so I just play by ear and just kind of go to that space. That, in terms of the meditation, I think that has changed me, without a doubt. I'm not quite sure when it changed me or how exactly the trajectory is working on me. But I do feel, I remember having a funny conversation with a friend who might be listening online. And we walked together once a week, one morning once a week for years, for like a decade. And I remember saying, what if I lose my ambition? What if I lose my energy and compulsion and I need to do things? What if I got more relaxed and everything felt easy and I wouldn't want to do it anymore? And I remember kind of puzzling through this with her, and she just listened and laughed. And I think I've let myself explore that idea. What does it feel like to give myself ease and do something because I want to do it, not because I feel I need to do it? And kind of learn, I don't know, how to set. It's not that I'm setting ambition aside, it's that it doesn't interest me as much anymore. I'm just interested in what I could discover and what I can discover with other people. Yeah, I'm not so interested in just the solo kind of exploration or trying to get to a certain peak. I think it's more about being present in the moment and being present with the people who are around you and just getting to experience the world. I mean, it's a magical place. And we only get a little bit of time in these bodies here with these senses, right? It goes by really fast. So that's more what I feel it's about. Yeah.
We'll go back to online.
Okay. Shannon is asking about time management. So you have so many roles and interests, and how do you make space for the play of writing, creative flow?
So I've come to this realization fairly late in my writing career, and that is that I like to write really intensively, like when I'm working on a big project. I like to just carve out space, write very intensively, and just do it. And you can kind of do that while you're doing other things. You can have a whole other life as long as you can find that time to carve out. And as long as you're able to just turn it on when you have that time. So that's what I've been experimenting with, because I kind of realized that even when I gave myself masses of time to write, I was playing on the piano instead. I don't need to write all the time. And I like to be with people, and writing is super lonely. And so I need to be out in the world with people. I just do. And when I had young kids and they were home, I had people around me all the time. As they've gotten older, the house is awfully quiet, and I just need to be out in the world with people. And then I can come back and have these intensive periods. And like when I was doing the final edits on Francie, it was the summer before it was published, so the summer of 2021, that's all I did that summer. And it was just like, I felt like it was the perfect life. I would get up in the morning, I would just work my way through whatever I was working on. That time, that draft, I just went through from front to back, and I did it in about, I knew it would take me about 6 weeks of just every day getting up and just kind of going through it. And it was magical, but that can't happen all the time, because I don't always have a project that's at this perfect stage where you can just sit and enjoy writing like that and work with an editor and, be able to ask all the questions you want to ask. So it was magical while it lasted, and then I need something else to do. So I always have ideas percolating, but I don't think I need to be working on a project all the time. I do write a lot. I write a blog, I have a notebook, I write with my students. I write a lot because I like to write. It doesn't have to turn into anything for me to be satisfied with it. I just enjoy it, because I truly believe that it's a practice, so you have to practice it. And I'm saying you have to, but honestly, it's just a pleasure. Like, practicing can be a real pleasure. So that's my time management strategy. Don't try to do it all at once.
We'll take one more.
One more? Okay.
Okay, so Brenda is asking, when a story comes to you, do you take time to plan and plot it? Or do you allow the story to come to you and then you discover it as you write?
Stories never come to me. Characters come to me. And plot is always my most difficult, challenging element of writing, really. So when characters come to me, I do try to listen. But I don't know where they're going or what they're going to tell me or what's going to happen. I get to figure that out as the character kind of shows me more and more who they are and what's possible within whatever that world is. So, yeah, I wish plot came easily to me. It's always something I'm doing toward the end of the writing process, which sounds really backward. I'll write a lot about characters. I'll realize, oh, these images are coming together in some way, and then I'll figure out how to structure it in a later draft. My early drafts are real messes. You wouldn't want to read them, and no one ever will.
Okay, one more question, maybe from the live audience. No one? Don't apologize for your question.
2 questions from the same person. Okay. I wrote down, you said you start with nothing but imagination and look out. That was the father speaking. Mm-hmm. That is the writing process, I'm thinking. And do your characters often tell about your writing process through their own visions?
Well, my little secret reason I like that line is that the dad is a very dangerous character. Yeah. And sometimes I think writers are very dangerous characters, and we have to be aware of that. So yeah, that wasn't really an accident to give it to him to say. Yeah. Good ear.
It just remains for me to thank you very much for sharing your gifts and your thoughts. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.